This video will deal with what makes a definition, which seems circular, but it's not. If a statement is true, its inverse and converse are also true. That is a definition. Remember, the contrapositive is always true. So if A, then B, if B, then A. We're going to show this by example. So if I have line segment AB, if a point bisects a segment, then it divides the segment into two congruent segments. So if C is the segment bisector of AB, then it divides AB into two congruent segments, AC and CB. Also, if a point divides a segment into two congruent segments, AC and CB are congruent, then it is the segment bisector or the midpoint. So all four of these are true. If we have a bisector, we get two congruent segments. Now, if it is not a bisector, we do not get two congruent segments. That is the inverse. Now the converse. If a point gives us two congruent segments, it is the segment bisector. Now the contrapositive, which is always true. If a point does not give us two congruent segments, it is not the segment bisector. That is a definition. All four are true. Statement, inverse, converse, contrapositive. Now let me give you an example of something that is not a definition. We're going to use a Venn diagram here. Dogs, collies. If an animal is a collie, then it is a dog. Now the inverse. If an animal is not a collie, then it is not a dog. That is not true. It could be a German Shepherd. Now the converse. If an animal is a dog, then it is a collie. Also not true. It could again be a German Shepherd. Now we get to the contrapositive, which again is always true. If an animal is not a dog, then it is not a collie. So you can see here in this example, the statement is true, its inverse and converse are not true, its contrapositive is true. For a definition, statement, inverse, converse, contrapositive are all true, but more so to be a definition, a statement is true and its converse is true. If a point is a bisector, then it divides a segment into two congruent segments. If a point divides a segment into two congruent segments, then it is the segment bisector, or the midpoint. If you're doing this in class, you're probably going to need to say the if-then. If a point is the midpoint, then it divides the segment into two congruent segments. Later on, you might be able to just say definition of midpoint for each of them. Again, as always, ask your teacher.